Welcome to Girl with Blue Energy. I'm Patty, the girl with blue energy, and I also have bipolar 1, and I cry a lot. So today I want to talk about excessive crying and crying all the time and why people cry a lot and also how to manage it. So before I decided to make this video, it's been something I've wanted to talk about for a while because I cry all the time. Like sometimes I cry every day, and a lot of people misunderstand my emotions. So today, before I decided to make this video, I went and did a search to see what other videos were on YouTube about crying all the time, and there are some videos on there. So apparently I'm not the only person who cries a lot. But I have my own thoughts on this, and I think there's some misunderstanding about why people cry and people with strong emotions. And no, I don't really think that because you are emotional or highly sensitive or cry a lot, that means there's something wrong with you or you need to go see a therapist to fix that. Some people are more emotional people and other people are not. And in fact, I've had people who've talked to me about their low emotions and wish they could have some of my ups and downs and my passion and energy. So we're all different people, and crying a lot to me does not mean there's something wrong with you. And I want to talk about that because I cry for a lot of different reasons. I ask my fiance, and I may get the courage to talk about all the inappropriate times I cry, and hopefully y'all can read between the lines on that. I cry all the time, and for lots of reasons that aren't always because I'm sad. In fact, most of the time, it's not because I'm sad. I cry when I exercise. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I laugh. I'm just an emotional person, and when people have the understanding that tears always mean you're sad, they may not understand why you cry. However, as someone who is an emotional person, I've lost jobs before, I've embarrassed myself, I've had some bad things happen in my life because I cry, and people perceive that as a weakness or character flaw, or I'm unstable. So I do want to talk about it a little bit. So first of all, if you cry all the time, know that you're not some sort of freak. Some people are just more sensitive and cry more easily. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, or that you need more years of counseling. Sometimes there's things going on that cause it. And that's what I want to talk about, the crying that is unmanageable and the crying that's just your personality. So this is what I would ask yourself if you cry a lot like me. Why are you crying? What is making you cry? Is it a situation that you need to get out of? Is it a bad relationship that you're with somebody who makes you feel bad and hurts your feelings all the time and then makes you feel like you're crazy for crying? Is it a boss that treats you like crap and then makes you feel like you're too emotional? Sometimes when you're crying, there's a reason for it, and the reason isn't you. Sometimes it's not you that's the problem, it's your circumstances. And maybe if that's why you're crying all the time, or you feel weak because you cry easily, maybe the job you're working at, or the partner you're with, or the people you associate with aren't the right people for you. If you have a supportive, positive atmosphere, you'll cry less. And if you cry when you're happy, I think you're pretty cool. There's some people that just are more emotional and passionate, and their tears come out more easily, and I'm one of them. So I would say first ask yourself why you're crying, if it's a situation that's making you cry, or if you're just crying for no reason. Now, if you're crying for no reason, or you feel you cry a lot and can't manage it, I have some advice that I've learned, and I'm actually trying to apply to my life. I cry very easily. I've always been sensitive from as long as I can remember. And when people try to make me stop crying, I tend to cry more. So there's some things for me that always trigger me to be more emotional. And one of them is fatigue. If I get tired, if I don't get enough sleep, I cry like a cranky 2-year-old. I get whiny and I cry really easy, and things just really bother me really easy. So look at the time that you're crying. Are you crying at night when you're tired? Are you crying when you're fatigued, when you've worked all day and you're exhausted? That could just mean that you need to take better care of yourself. You need to get more sleep. And in fact, that's one of my biggest reasons why I cry. And I get cranky and sometimes not fun to be around when I'm tired. So make sure that you're sleeping if you're crying a lot. Sometimes it's your diet or your hormones, because for me, I get now I'm going through menopause, so I'm emotional all the time, but I used to get really incredibly emotional around my period. Everyone knew when I was getting my period because I would cry. So, if you're crying around your period, talk to your doctor, because it could be your hormones and there could be something you could do about it. Or for me, I'm taking an estrogen patch because menopause has certainly made my emotions stronger. And also diet. If you're not eating well, if you're hungry and you're not getting good nutrition, if you're cranky because you're not, or emotional because you're not eating well, there's a lot of environmental things you can do. So I would say make sure you're eating enough and getting enough sleep. And if you're doing those things and still crying a lot, there's things you can do that I do to manage my emotions. So one of them is I meditate a lot and I journal. So I do a lot of things for self-care. Exercise is my number one antidepressant. It helps me to stay stable, and I also am really OCD with my sleep routines and making sure I get at least 7.5 hours of sleep, because when I don't, that's when I get really emotional. I also limit the amount of stress I get or I try to manage the amount of stress I'm under, because when I have a lot of personal stress in my life, I get more emotional. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means that you need to manage the things that are causing you the stress. I use mindfulness and I journal a lot. And I also, I used to do all my journaling on paper. So if I would be upset, if somebody upset me, I would take a few minutes and I would journal either on paper, or I have an app on my phone where I can journal. And now I've discovered that I make video journals sometimes. I just get out my camera and talk on it, and it helps me to calm down and regulate my emotions. But I will say, as someone who's recovering from agoraphobia and severe panic attacks, I used to have embarrassing panic attacks where I would cry in public. I've had some pretty humiliating panic attacks, which is what leads to agoraphobia. And I think some of the same things that cause us to have panic attacks cause us to cry inappropriately. So, for example, I hate flying, and I've had a flightophobia for a really long time. And it used to be anytime I would get on a plane, I would put my head down in my lap, and I would have to fight not to cry on the plane. And it was embarrassing because I didn't want people seeing me cry. And I think the same emotions that trigger panic attacks may cause me to cry a lot. So it's something I've learned to use behavior modification on. The things that that trigger me to cry, I still try to do and work through it. And the more times you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. But I also actively, when I feel like I'm going to start crying in front of people, because I hate that and I do it all the time. I do it on my YouTube videos. I cry easily. If I feel like it's going to cause me stress to cry, I will stop what I'm doing. I will, when I used to have a regular job in retail, you can't be a manager and burst into tears. Nobody will listen to you. They'll think you're a Looney Tune. So what I would do is I would go in the bathroom and I would do this exercise. I'd just go in the stall and I'd take my hands and I'd put this protective force field around myself imaginarily and calm myself down and ground myself. And just doing some of those things would help me to manage my emotions, being aware that, hey, I'm getting emotional here. What can I do? Let me step away for a minute, take some deep breaths, use mindfulness, which means accepting your feelings. Okay, I'm emotional right now. What can I do? Let me release these emotions and be calm. And just doing mindfulness practices and talking yourself through your emotions can help. But the biggest thing I want to tell people that are emotional, because this is what I think they're not getting right, is that some people are just more emotional. And it's okay. You need to learn a little bit of self-acceptance and say, hey, I cry a lot. I'm more emotional than other people. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with me or I need to be fixed. What I do need to do is manage my emotions. So take some time, if they're interfering with my life, take some time to go to the bathroom or call a friend or do something to calm yourself down. But don't feel bad if you cry a lot. Some of us are just more sensitive and more emotional. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you cry a lot like me, I'd love to hear your comments, and if you think I'm right, like that some people just are more emotional and some people aren't, or if you think that someone who cries a lot and is emotional, that there's actually something wrong with them. So let me know what you think. Thanks, guys.